really, I spent some time this week doing not a lot, if I'm being honest. Just thinking about speaking today, what to share with you, and just obviously last Sunday, Joe passed away. Now maybe you. Okay, maybe you remember Joe. Maybe some of you weren't that close to Joe, and I know some of you were really, really good friends and really close to her. And I know that quite a few people who were quite close to her aren't here today. They may be watching online at home or watch this later. But certainly, I wanted to just talk about Joe a little bit. As I preached this morning, I wanted to share a little bit about her life, who she was. I think it's important for us to recognise that and grieve together and remember her. I'll just put some pictures up there. I got that off of Marlene's Facebook, and she'd done a lovely montage there, just remembering her. Some of my memories of Joe is Joe was the lady who used to sit by the door there. That was her spot, wasn't it? And she really loved to worship the Lord, and I think she liked a little bit of space to be able to do that. And she would go for it in worship. She wasn't holding back, and it was wonderful to watch, and it was encouraging. If you were leading the meeting or you were just doing something and you looked up and you saw, oh, Joe's going for it, maybe I should go for it too. And it was always a real encouragement to me. She was a really sweet soul, if you knew her. She was really kind, and she was a really good friend to many in this church. I was chatting with Mary this week, and I said, Mary, how are you doing? And she was just saying that she was just really upset because Joe was just such a good friend to her. And I didn't see that one. There's so many friendships that are going on in our church that you maybe don't pick up on or see, and that was one of them. And it was just great to hear how people who can be so different can connect in such a real way, and that is the beauty of the church and what God does. And He binds us together, doesn't He? And just reading through the WhatsApp messages that people wrote about her, there was just that kind of theme that she was just such a good friend to people. And what a great memory. I'd love people to say that about me when I'm gone. I think she had this wonderful ability to make you feel special, and to. I remember, I go around and chat with people and pastor people from time to time, and I always remember going. I went with Marlene to see Joe a few times, and I always used to come away thinking, oh, maybe I am quite a good pastor, because she made you feel like you were good, and she made it sometimes a bit about you, and I think that's a wonderful way to be. That when you're with people, you've got the ability to make it about them, and that, to me, that was really an encouragement. She was an open book, wasn't she? She'd tell you exactly how she was feeling and what she was going through. And I think that's also a great thing. The other thing I really noticed about her was just a real sense of joy that she would have, but particularly in worship. And I know that I'm maybe going to talk a little later about some of the difficult things that she went through as a person, but when she was in the presence of the Lord, she was free. She was really free, and she loved it. And I thought that I had this morning is that, she's free now. and she's really free and she's loving it. And I'm sure she loved to praise the Lord, and she gets to do that forever. I don't think I'm going to get through this without crying, but I'll try. And a couple of things that really touched me when I spent a bit of time talking with Dion this week, and he said that once God really got hold of her, he changed her to be this person who thought about others. And she was feeling really, really ill, rotten these last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe longer. But she made a real special effort to go to little Jolie's nativity. And we know that meant so much to him and to the family. But that's the type of person she was. She wanted to be there for others. Great encouragement. I remember we hadn't seen Jo for a little while, and I said to Maya, I think we should go and visit her and see how she's doing. And she said, okay, I'll set it up. So we went together to see her, and I just felt to encourage her, and I shared with her, look, I said, we're really missing you on Sunday, Jo, because you've got a real gift of encouragement. When you welcome people, it's not like everybody else welcoming people. She'd always give you a big hug, wouldn't she? And that big smile, and she just wanted to invite you in. And there was something of God in that, I felt. And I just wanted to encourage her. And I said, you've got a real gift of encouraging others. And she got really emotional and she cried. I just felt it's because someone was telling her how valuable she was, and that she was important, and that God was using her. And I think one of the wonderful things about her story is that God can use people who have been broken, and people who are still hurting. God can still use them, and that's an amazing encouragement to all of us. And I know she was a great encouragement to the Spies family, who really committed to her. And I just want to commend you for that and the way that you committed to her. And she was a great nana to Joel and Zadok. And she loved them dearly. And to her neighbour Luke as well. Luke, I don't know if you're watching, but I know that she would sit with Luke and watch from home, and she'd get him down and they'd watch together. And I know, Luke, that she loved you very dearly, and she saw you as family. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop talking a little bit about Jo, and I'm going to try and share a few things from the Bible, and then I want to bring it back to Jo a little bit, if that's okay. I want to talk about Abraham and Isaac. Now, you remember Abraham, he couldn't have kids, and he got really old, and God promised him, I'm going to give you a family, I'm going to give you I'm going to give you this wonderful inheritance, and your family is going to be like the stars. There's going to be that many of them. And he was like, how? I don't know how. And eventually, when he was 100, God gave him this wonderful little boy, Isaac, and it was fantastic. And he made some mess-ups on the way, but it was fantastic. He gave him this boy, and after he'd given him to him, God said, I want you to take this boy, and I want you to go up the mountain. I want you to build an altar. And I want you to give up the things that is most important to you. I want you to lay them on the altar. I want you to put them aside, because I'm asking. And I want you to trust in my plan, not in your plan. And I want you to give up who you think you are and what you think you've got. And I don't know how Abraham did it, but he went up. He went up the mountain, didn't he? And he took his son and he built the altar. And he was ready to make the sacrifice. And the Lord stopped him and said, no, don't. It's all right. And, you know, there's I think that's the challenge for us as people. The Lord is sometimes saying, I want you to go up. Will you go up? Will you trust me? Will you lay your plans aside? And maybe he gives you those things back, maybe he doesn't. But our challenge isn't to build a wonderful life. Our challenge is to give our life up to the Lord. And I want to encourage you, whatever you're going through, your challenge isn't to succeed. It isn't to make it. Your challenge, whether you're willing to accept it or not, is to give up. And give it to the Lord. And stop fighting. And stop, you know what, stop looking for the wiggle room. So that you can have God and you can have the other things in your life as well. I'm one of those people. I look for the wiggle room. How can I make it and have God too? And we see this whole thing carried on, and we see Jesus, and there's this story where Jesus' family, his brothers, say to him, "Do you know what you need to do? You need to go up to Jerusalem. You need to go up to Judea." Because here, you can't make a name for yourself here. If you're going to be the man, go and be the man. And he said, it's not my time to go up, because he knew what going up to Jerusalem really meant. This is kind of a little theme that I just kind of want to hit on, is at some point, we've all got to go up to Jerusalem. And I suppose I don't know if I'm making this very clear, but Jesus knew, I think he knew from even when he was a little boy, at some point I've got to go up and I've got to lay my life down. This is the plan, because he knew the scriptures back to front. Jesus, when he was a little boy in the temple, he was teaching the scholars stuff. He knew the word, and I think that there would have been this sense on his heart that he knew what the end game was. And it wasn't his plan. The plan was already set out. And he had to decide, will I submit to it? So will I submit to the will of God and stop fighting and let myself die for everybody else? And it's a wonderful story, but it really is the battle of our own hearts. Are we willing to say, I'm going to let what I'm holding on to go? I'm going to let the person that I want to be go. Jesus said this, he said, from then on Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go up to Jerusalem, and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders and the leading priests and the teachers of religious law, and he would be killed. He knew what it meant. He knew what he was doing. He didn't just walk into... He laid his life down. And to me, this is the beauty and the wonder of who Jesus is. Because do you know what? Giving up your own will is... it's hard. It's not an easy thing. And as I was thinking about Joe's life, I really... like when something happens and it just doesn't sit with you, like it just doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel fair. And I just left it before the Lord, and I said, Lord, I want to share with the church. Lord, I want to know your heart on over this. And I really felt that this is what the Lord was saying. And this is what he was saying to Joe, and this is what he was saying about Joe to us. And it's this. You won your battle, Joe. It's time to come home now. Sorry. I want to tell you a little bit about Joe's battle, really, because she had a massive battle to fight that you couldn't see just by looking at her on a Sunday morning. Now, many of you would have known Joe, and you'd have known some of the things that she went through and some of the things she struggled with. And I'm going to share some of those things now, and I want to try and do it in a sensitive way. I mainly focus on some of the positives about Joe's life, but to do justice to her, I think I need to talk about some of the heartbreak that went on. Joe was, she was given up at birth by her parents, and she was adopted, and her adoptive family, they did not treat her well at all, and they made her quite sure. She made her. She knew very well that she wasn't, that she was adopted and she wasn't part of the family. How awful is that? And even in later life, they totally cut her off. And family said, look, I just don't want to know you. How awful is that? And Joe, she never found out who her biological father was. They wouldn't tell her. And for years she tried to find out who it was, and there were people who knew, but they wouldn't tell her. And she never found out who her biological father was in the end. And that caused her so much pain. And as a young person, she was abused emotionally and sexually, repeatedly. But it was by people who were supposed to protect her. Including family. And I think she was desperately looking for this connection to somebody, to something, to know who she was. And she looked in all the wrong places. And the pattern of abuse from her childhood continued into her adult life. With different people taking advantage of her in the same old ways. And she made some bad decisions, and she looked in the wrong places. And she turned to the wrong things to numb the pain. And if you listen to her testimonies online, and she said she looked to every type of kind of way to shift the pain of all this that you're carrying, that I can't imagine what it would feel like. You know, I know some of you here can, because you've been through similar things. And but you know what? 7 or 8 years ago, around that sort of time, she found the Lord. And in her testimony, she talks about the only thing that gave her the relief from that pain was Jesus Christ. Amen? But you know what? Like so many of us, we can meet Jesus Christ, but it's not just a bed of roses straight after. You're still dealing with things. Things are still unravelling, and And that pain was still real, and those coping mechanisms that have been embedded for so long take time to kind of work through. Maybe she got she also got cancer at some point, and she did beat the cancer. Maybe four years ago, Dion and Marlene essentially invited her into their family, and not in a verbal way, but in a real come and be part of us way. And I just want to commend you guys for that, because I don't think she would have made it without you guys doing that. I'm going to be honest. And watching you and Marlene just love her unconditionally. And there was lots of ups, and there were lots of downs, and there were lots more downs. Yeah, she was Nana Joe, wasn't she? And she was part of the family, and I know that Joel and Zazok saw her like their nan, and that was wonderful. What a wonderful thing to do. What a wonderful thing to do. I talked about this sense of going up to Jerusalem, this sense of sometimes there's something that you've got to take and you've got to deal with it. And you can't just keep going and just living and forgetting about it. Sometimes you just got to deal with it. And sometimes the pain's so real that you can't face it for a long time. But I suppose the thing that I want to share with you is that through the support of people in this church, and the friendship that people in this church gave her, and the friendship she gave us, and through the family that Dion and Marlene really gave her, she came to a place where she said, you know what, all this pain and hurt, instead of covering it up, instead of trying to push it down, instead of trying to get an answer, and she looked for answers, and she looked for people to give her the answers that she was looking for, and she didn't get them. She didn't get the answers. And she took the very, very difficult decision about a year ago to say, I'm going to face it. I'm going to face it all. I'm going to take it up to Jerusalem. I'm going to give it all to the Lord. I'm going to let it go. Now, you might say, oh yeah, that's... But the problem is, when that shaped your character for 50 years, what you're saying is, I'm going to give myself up. And all the things that have been wronged against me, I'm not going to hold on to them. And when it's that many things over that amount of time, she spent a year, and many of you know her, she spent a year doing this counselling. And it just came out of the blue as an opportunity, and she said, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to give up all these things. I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to go through the pain of talking about them and dealing with them and working through them. And I'm going to give them all up. And it was amazing to just go around with Marlene and visit her one time, and she was talking about how she was going to forgive, and she was going to let those things go, and that she was praying about it, that she was giving it to the Lord. And you know what? I think she was just coming to the end of this counselling thing, and I think it just finished. And she'd given up to the Lord. And that's not, please don't underestimate how hard that is, how real that is, and how much that hurts. But she did it. And do you know what? As she did it, she moved into a new freedom. And I think over the last months, I know she's been in a lot of physical pain and she's been struggling, but there's been a freedom in her and in the way she's talking, in the way she's encouraging, in the way she's been positive, God had really set her free. He really set her free because she took this whole thing of who she was and everything that had happened to her, and she said, Lord, I'll give it to you. And that's our battle, is to stop fighting for what we think we deserve. Say, Lord, you take it. And she did it. And I commend her for it, and I look up to her for it, because I've never been through those things that she's been through. And I look at her and I think, if she can do it, then anyone can do it. And if she can find the Lord, she can get free, then I can get free. And if she can talk about it, I can talk about it. And we can talk about it. And you know what? One of the things that really encouraged me was she had been saying to Dion and Marlene recently, she'd been saying, look, when you guys get back from South Africa, I want to change my name. And I want to change it from Joe Bird, and I want to change it to Joe Grace. And I just really think, I just thought, it's so wonderful. Because that's what Jesus does, doesn't he? When he gets hold of people, he said, no, that was what your name was. This is who you are now. You remember Peter? He was Simon. He said, no, that's not your name anymore. You're Peter. You're someone I'm going to build on. You know, Saul, what he was before and everything. And then when Jesus met him, he said, you're Paul now. Your name's changing. And I think he'd done that work in Joe. He'd done that work in Joe where he changed her. And she was saying, I'm changing my name. And before, wherever I was before and whatever I went through now, there's grace. And I'm living in that grace and I've let it go. How wonderful. How wonderful. And that really touched my heart. And do you know what? I think she got the victory. And there's so many people dealing with fighting, and I've got to fight tooth and nail for what I deserve and what I think I should get and my future, my happiness. And all the time they're fighting, they're going down. And they're getting more tangled up. And I want to encourage you, there's only one way to get free. And you've got to take it and you've got to put it up on the altar. And you've got to say, Lord, I'm going to let it go. That's not easy to do in any way, but it's the only way. It's the only way you can really get free. And I think Joe is an example to all of us. And I wanted to take some time this morning to encourage you in that, if that's okay. I was thinking it's okay to feel emotional, and it's important to grieve, and we can do that as a church together. But what I'm hoping is by the time we have a funeral life celebration, probably be next year, a little bit later next year, my prayer is that it's a real celebration. It's not a mourning of someone who was not treated fairly, but it's a celebration of someone who found the victory and fought the battle and won and found joy through all the pain and was able to bless others when maybe others would think about themselves. I don't know how long I've been going for. Have I been going for a long time? But I hope this makes more sense to you now when I put this up there. You won your battle, Joe. It's time to come home. And I felt, first of all, I just felt a little bit gutted that she didn't get to change her name. But her name's written in the book of life. And it will say Joe Grace. And that encouraged me. And I just felt the Lord saying, it's all right. She's with me now. And she can praise all she wants. She can jump up and down all she likes now. And she can enjoy it. And she's free. And that's wonderful, isn't it? But do you know what? This story, to me, it kind of shook my boots, in a way, because this has got to be the story of River Church, like on loop. That's how I feel. That people come and they're broken, and they find freedom in Jesus because they let it go and they let Him have His plan, and they put their own plans aside. But if that's going to be the story of River Church, we need people to get hold of this thing that Dion and Marlene have so wonderfully got hold of, which is the spirit of adoption. Now, I'm not saying that you should just go out and adopt someone into your home tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. Please, but there's a spirit that says, do you know what? I'm going to fight for somebody. It's not going to be me. This whole world is fighting for me, isn't it? You feel it, and my happiness, my peace, my this, my that. But when God really gets a hold of you, there's something that He does something in your spirit that said it's not about me anymore. And I put this up on the board because I feel this is for us. Father to the fatherless, defender of widows. This is God. Father to the fatherless, defender of widows. This is God. Now, to me, this is revolutionary, because it's not thinking about I've got to follow all the rules, I've got to be right, I've got to get everything right all the time. But it's a heart, it's a spirit that says I'm going to be there for people. This is God whose dwelling place is holy. We want to talk about being holy. We want to talk about being set apart. Set apart unto God. And when you spend time in His presence, you will start to get hold of this heart that says it's not about me. I'm going to find someone to love, and I'm going to keep loving them. God places the lonely in families. He sets the prisoner free and gives them joy. And when I think about Joe, I kind of think about, this is the story of River Church and Joe. She's got a father. She's got a father in heaven, and she's with him. She's found out where she's really come from, and she's gone home. God places the lonely in families. Dion and Marlene, I just thank you for what you've done. But we've seen this in Joe's life. She sets the prisoners free and she gives them joy. We saw that. We saw that firsthand. And we know this word is true. So when we think about adoption, okay, yeah, there's going to be some who are called to, do you know what, we're going to invite this person into our life. Who are you inviting into your life? That doesn't mean they have to live under your roof today. Maybe it does, and I know there are people in this room who are saying, I invite you to just be under our roof. And we're going to love you even when it gets messy. And I think this is the key thing. It's not a one-moment gesture. You know, the work of Jesus Christ is a continual battle for people. And Jesus doesn't give up on us. And I suppose I want to encourage you, if we're going to show Jesus' love to people, it's you keep going when they're an utter mess. And you keep going when they're hurting you. You keep going. You keep loving. And you work out ways. You know, I read something lovely about the adopter, and it talks about the person, the people who adopt. It's not up to the person who gets adopted. It's the person who adopts. It's all on them to say, I want you. I want you. And this is the heart of Christ, is to say, I want you. I'm willing to go to the cross because I want you. And I don't care that you reject me and you're going to reject me over and over again. And I just want to win you. What a wonderful heart. And he puts that in us. I think I'm going to stop there. Maybe your challenge is that you need to go up to Jerusalem and you need to put things on the altar. And you just say, Lord, I'm going to let this part of me just die. This fighting, my continual fight to be the person that I think I should be and have the things that I think I deserve, I'm going to put it down. Maybe God's been just whispering in your ear saying, will you live for others? Will you live for others? Will you be there? Will you keep being there? Even though they're hurting you, don't give up on them. You've got people in your life and you're like, all I want to do, I don't need to call you. Why am I calling you? You should be calling me. And the Lord's saying, no, go on, go for them again, go for them again, go for them again. I just want to encourage you. This is the heart of the Lord. And I want us to continue. I think this is what's wonderful about this church, is people do this. I'm not telling you to do something that you're not already doing, but I want us all to catch this spirit. Maybe you look at your friendship group and you see someone who's on the outside. And you say, well, it's not my job to... But maybe the Lord's whispering to you saying, will you go for them? Will you invite them even though they don't fit, they don't deserve it, they can't do it themselves? Will you do it? Will you fight for them? Maybe it's just asking you to invite them. I don't know. Take the time with them. Right, I'm going to stop. Maybe I can just pray. We're going to have a bit of communion this morning. Come up for communion. Come up and receive from the Lord. But hold these things to him and just say, Lord, what is it you want of me? Are there things that I need to... What a great... Jesus, he said, this is my body broken for you. This is my blood poured out for you. This is me giving myself up for others. And maybe just as you hold that before the Lord and you say, Lord, I want to be part of that. That's what you're saying when you're taking the bread and the wine. You're saying, I want to be part of that, putting others first. I want to be part of that, giving up myself. I want to be part of that, submitting to the plan that is yours and not mine.